My name is Joshua. What I'm about to tell you may not sound well to some people. Some of you will laugh, some will get angry, but for those who will listen to the end of my story, your life might never be the same. I died. But that's not where my story begins. It begins 3 months earlier, when I heard a voice that I chose to ignore. I was washing dishes after dinner when it happened. The water was warm on my hands, and my wife Mirabelle was in the living room watching the news. Everything felt normal. Then I heard it, soft as a mother's lullaby, but clear as a bell. Joshua. That's all, just my name. I looked around. Mirabelle was still on the couch. The TV was too loud for her to have called me. I dried my hands and went to check. "Did you say something, honey?" She looked up, confused. "No, why?" I shrugged it off. Maybe I was just tired. But the whisper came again the next day, and the day after that. Always when I was alone. Always just my name. I started to worry I was going crazy. Work stress, maybe. The bills piling up. The kids needing new shoes. Life stuff. I decided to ignore it. Looking back now, I wish I had listened. I wish I had stopped everything and said, "Yes, Lord, I'm listening." But I didn't know then what I know now. August started like any other months. I made coffee, kissed Mirabelle goodbye, drove to work listening to the radio. The morning flew by in meetings and phone calls. Then, around 11:30, I felt strange, like someone was squeezing my chest with giant hands. I was in the break room getting another cup of coffee when it happened. The pain hit me like a truck. I dropped my mug and it shattered on the floor. My left arm went numb. The room started spinning. I tried to call for help, but no sound came out. Then the next thing I saw was darkness. Later, they told me I had what doctors call a massive heart attack. My heart stopped for 7 minutes. 7 minutes where I wasn't breathing. 7 minutes where my body lay still on that break room floor while my coworkers did CPR and waited for the ambulance. But I wasn't gone. I was more alive than I had ever been. Before we continue, please let me know where you're listening from. It would be nice to feel closer, even if we're physically apart. Also, don't forget to like. It will help this video to reach so many people who need to listen to this testimony, and leave a comment. Share your thoughts about this near-death experience testimony. Let's have a fair and open discussion so we can learn from each other here on this channel, and don't forget to subscribe for more of this content coming your way. Enjoy listening. The first thing I noticed was the peace. Imagine the quietest, most peaceful moment of your life. Now, multiply that by 1,000. That's what it felt like when I left my body. I could see everything from above, my body on the floor, my friend Mike pressing on my chest, tears in his eyes. I wanted to tell him I was okay, but I couldn't. Then came the light. Not like a flashlight or the sun, but something warmer, something that felt like home. I was pulled toward it, not by force, but by love, like a child running to their father's arms after being away for a long time. I wasn't afraid. Fear doesn't exist where I was going. I was curious, excited even. This was the beginning of the most incredible journey of my life. The light grew brighter as I moved toward it, but it wasn't harsh on my eyes. Instead, it felt like every cell in my being was drinking it in. I passed through what I can only describe as a tunnel, but calling it a tunnel doesn't do it justice. It was alive. The walls pulsed with colors I'd never seen before. Music played that wasn't music. It was pure joy turned into sound. Time worked differently there. I felt like I was traveling for hours, but also like it was instant. Past, present, and future all existed at the same time. I saw moments from my childhood, my wedding day, and things that hadn't happened yet all at once. As I traveled, I began to understand things I'd never understood before. Why bad things happen to good people. Why prayers sometimes felt unanswered. why life was so hard sometimes. It all made sense in the light. At the end of the journey, I found myself in a place that was more real than real. Everything on earth suddenly seemed like a shadow compared to where I was. The colors were more colorful. The air itself seemed to sing. And standing before me was a man who was somehow familiar, though I'd never seen him before. He was tall, but not unusually so. His skin was bronze-colored, like it had been kissed by the sun. His hair was white as fresh snow, but he looked young and old at the same time. But it was his eyes that took my breath away. They looked like fire, but gentle fire. Like a campfire that keeps you warm on a cold night. "Joshua," he said, and his voice was the same whisper I'd been hearing for 3 months. I fell to my knees, though I didn't decide to. My soul just knew who he was. "Jesus?" I whispered. He smiled, and that smile could have lit up all the darkness in the universe. "Yes, my son, we need to talk." He led me through what I can only call a garden, but gardens on earth are poor copies of this place. The flowers sang as we walked by, not with voices, but with their very being. The trees danced in a breeze that felt like liquid love. Every step I took on the golden grass sent ripples of light in all directions. We sat by a stream that flowed uphill, and the water was so clear I could see to the bottom, even though it seemed infinitely deep. Jesus picked up a stone and skipped it across the water. Each skip sent out waves of music that harmonized with the flower's song. "This is what earth was supposed to be like," he said softly. "This is what it will be like again, after I make all things new." I wanted to ask a million questions, but somehow just being near him answered most of them. Peace filled every corner of my heart. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly safe. But our peaceful moment was interrupted when Jesus stood up. His expression changed, becoming serious, but still kind. "Come," he said. "I need to show you something." We walked to a massive building that looked like it was carved from a single, giant pearl. As we got closer, I could hear sounds coming from inside, crying, weeping, but not sad crying. It was the sound of deep, deep love feeling pain. Inside the building, I saw something that broke my heart. Angels were weeping. Huge, powerful beings with wings like eagles were on their knees, tears flowing like rivers. In the center of the room was what looked like a giant window, but it showed scenes from Earth. I saw children going to bed hungry. I saw wars tearing families apart. I saw people hurting each other with words and actions. I saw churches where people argued instead of loved. I saw the earth itself crying out from pollution and neglect. "This is the hall of tears," Jesus said, his own eyes wet. "Every act of cruelty, every moment of pain, every injustice on earth is felt here. We weep because we love so much, and we weep because time is running short." Jesus led me away from the Hall of Tears to a quiet room filled with scrolls. They lined the walls from floor to ceiling, each one glowing with soft light. He walked to one particular scroll and pulled it down. My name was written on it in letters that seemed to be made of light. "This is your scroll, Joshua," he said, unrolling it carefully. "Every person has one. It contains their purpose, their calling, their destiny." As he opened it, I saw pictures and words that told the story of my life, but not just my past, my future too. I saw myself as a young boy, asking my grandmother about God. I saw my wedding day. I saw moments of joy and sadness I'd forgotten. And then I saw something that shocked me. I saw myself standing in front of crowds of people, telling them about this very conversation. I saw myself writing, speaking, warning people about what was coming. I saw some people listening and changing their lives. I saw others walking away angry. "This is why you're here," Jesus said. "This is why I've been calling your name. You're going back, Joshua. and you're going to tell the world what you've seen and heard." Before I could ask questions about my scroll, Jesus took me to another room. This one had mirrors covering every wall, but these weren't ordinary mirrors. Each one showed a different country on Earth. I saw America, struggling with division and anger. I saw countries in Africa where children played in dirt streets but had smiles brighter than the sun. I saw places where war had torn everything apart. "Every nation is at a crossroads," Jesus explained. "What happens in the next few years will determine their fate for generations. Some will choose light, others will choose darkness. The time of sitting on the fence is over." He pointed to one mirror showing my hometown. I could see my own street, my house, my neighbors going about their daily lives. None of them knew that in heavenly places, decisions were being made that would change everything. "The trumpets are about to sound," he said quietly. "4 warnings to wake up a sleeping world. After that, everything changes." Jesus showed me a calendar that wasn't like any calendar I'd ever seen. Instead of days and months, it showed events and seasons, natural disasters, political changes, spiritual awakenings. They were all marked out like appointments in God's schedule book. "August is when it begins," he said, pointing to a section that glowed brighter than the rest. 4 trumpets will sound between August and December. Each one is a warning, a chance for people to wake up and turn back to me. Each one will be louder than the last. I saw dates circled in gold. Events that would shake the world and make people ask the questions they'd been avoiding. Some would interpret these events as coincidences or natural occurrences, but those with spiritual eyes would see them for what they truly were: love calls from heaven. Jesus showed me the first trumpet in detail. I saw archaeologists in Jerusalem digging in a place they'd excavated many times before, but this time was different. Their shovels would hit something that would change everything: an ancient scroll wrapped in cloth that seemed to glow even in the darkness underground. The scroll contained writings that would confirm things people had doubted about God's love for all people. It would have messages in multiple languages, proving that God's heart was never meant to be limited to one group or nation. The discovery would make headlines around the world. But I also saw something sad. Television experts and internet commentators would try to explain it away. They would call it a hoax or say it didn't mean what it obviously meant. They would create elaborate theories to avoid the simple truth that God was speaking to them. I watched as world leaders held emergency meetings, trying to figure out how to respond to the discovery. Some wanted to hide it, others wanted to use it to support their political views. Very few simply wanted to listen to what God was saying through it. Churches would split over the scroll's message. Some would embrace its call to love all people without limits. Others would reject it because it challenged their comfortable traditions. The message of unity would create division, just as Jesus predicted it would. Despite all attempts to minimize or hide the scroll's importance, its message would spread like wildfire on social media. Young people especially would embrace its call for radical love and acceptance. They would organize gatherings in parks and public squares, reading the scroll's words aloud and praying for their cities. The more authorities tried to control the message, the brighter it would shine. It was like trying to hold back the sunrise with their hands. The second trumpet would be harder to watch. Jesus showed me churches where people who spoke truth were asked to leave. Pastors who preached about caring for the poor and loving outsiders would find their congregations shrinking. Leaders who called for real change instead of comfortable traditions would lose their positions. But I also saw something beautiful. These silenced voices wouldn't stay quiet. They would start new kinds of churches, in coffee shops, community centers, and even people's backyards. These gatherings would be small but powerful, filled with people hungry for real relationship with God instead of religious performance. In some places, I saw literal fires starting in church buildings. Not destructive fires, but strange, unexplainable flames that would burn on altars without consuming anything. Scientists would have no explanation. Some would call it mass hallucination, but those who saw it would know they were witnessing something holy. The fires would spread to other churches, but only to those where people were truly seeking God with pure hearts. Buildings where greed, pride, or hatred had taken root would remain cold and dark. Young people would lead a revolution of worship that looked nothing like traditional church services. They would sing in languages they'd never learned, paint prophetic pictures, and dance with abandon in the streets. Critics would call it chaos, but heaven would call it beautiful. These new worshipers would care more about feeding the hungry than building bigger buildings. They would choose helping the homeless over hosting fancy dinners. Their worship would be measured not by how loud they sang, but by how much they loved. The third trumpet would announce itself with something visible in the sky. A new star would appear, brighter than Venus, visible even in daylight. Astronomers would scramble to explain it, but their calculations wouldn't make sense. It would be in a place where no star should be able to exist. The star would pulse with different colors, sometimes gold, sometimes silver, sometimes a blue so beautiful it would make people weep just looking at it. And somehow, people all over the world would see it in their own time zones, as if it were personally shining just for them. Scientists would point telescopes at the new star and find readings that contradicted everything they knew about physics. Some would admit they had no explanation. Others would create complex theories to avoid saying the obvious, that they were witnessing a miracle. But while scientists argued, ordinary people would report extraordinary experiences. They would have dreams and visions. They would hear whispers of love and hope in their darkest moments. Children especially would become sensitive to spiritual things, often knowing things they had no way of knowing naturally. Jesus showed me classrooms where children would start talking about angels as casually as they talked about their friends. Teachers wouldn't know what to do when students reported seeing lights around certain people or knowing things about their classmates' home situations without being told. Parents would be amazed when their young children would pray for neighbors by name, even though the family had never told them about those neighbors' problems. The children would speak of heaven like it was the most natural thing in the world, because to them, it would be. The fourth trumpet would bring the most dramatic changes. In the poorest places on earth, supernatural provision would begin appearing. Families with nothing would find food on their tables that no one had brought. Wells would spring up in desert places where no water had ever been found. But the provision would come with a choice. Those who received these gifts could share them freely, and the supply would never end. Those who tried to hoard or sell them would watch the gifts disappear like morning mist. Meanwhile, in the entertainment capitals of the world, a different kind of war would rage. Actors, musicians, and directors would begin having spiritual encounters on movie sets and in recording studios. Some would embrace these experiences and use their platforms to point people toward God. Others would fight against them and double down on content that promoted darkness. The division would become so clear that entertainment would split into two completely different industries, one that lifted hearts toward heaven and one that pulled them toward despair. But the most beautiful part of the fourth trumpet would be Jesus himself walking among people in major cities around the world. Not everyone would see him with their physical eyes, but those who did would never be the same. He would appear as an ordinary man, sometimes a homeless person, sometimes a janitor, sometimes a child. Those who showed kindness to these seemingly ordinary people would later realize they had been visited by the King of Kings himself. Their acts of love would be multiplied back to them in ways that defied explanation. After the fourth trumpet, Jesus showed me what would happen next. Governments that had relied on power instead of justice would begin crumbling from within. not through war or revolution, but through their own corruption being exposed like light shining in dark corners. Economic systems built on greed would collapse overnight. Banks that had cheated people would lose everything in single days. Companies that had polluted the earth or mistreated workers would find themselves bankrupt without explanation. But I also saw something hopeful. New leaders would emerge. People who had been serving quietly in their communities, caring for others without seeking recognition. These humble servants would step into the vacuum left by fallen giants and begin building something better. The most amazing thing I saw was how quickly goodness would spread once it really got started. Acts of kindness would inspire more acts of kindness, like dominoes falling in every direction. Videos of people helping strangers would get millions of views, inspiring viewers to go out and do the same. Prayer groups would multiply faster than any social media platform ever had. People would organize to clean up neighborhoods, feed the hungry, and care for the elderly. What started as small gestures would become massive movements that transformed entire cities. Even people who had never believed in God would find themselves drawn to join these movements, not because of religious rules, but because of the pure love they witnessed. The people God would use most powerfully would shock everyone. Children would become prophets, speaking wisdom that amazed adults. Refugees would bring spiritual gifts to the countries that welcomed them. People with the darkest past would become the brightest lights, their testimonies of transformation changing thousands of lives. Traditional religious leaders would struggle with this reversal of expectations. Many would resist the idea that God would speak through unqualified people, but those with humble hearts would recognize that God had always chosen the unlikely to confound the wise. The world would begin dividing into two types of places. Some cities would become beacons of hope, where crime decreased dramatically, where neighbors helped neighbors, and where even the air seemed cleaner and brighter. Visitors to these places would comment on an unexplainable peace they felt just walking the streets. Other cities would sink deeper into chaos and despair, not because God abandoned them, but because they rejected every offered gift of grace. These places would become dangerous and dark, even in daylight. People would flee them for the cities of light. The contrast would become so stark that no one could deny something supernatural was happening. Finally, every person on earth would face a choice that couldn't be postponed or ignored. The evidence of God's reality would be so overwhelming that claiming ignorance would be impossible. Everyone would have to choose which side of the line they wanted to stand on. Some would choose light even if it cost them everything. Others would choose darkness even though they could see where it led. The choice would reveal what had been in people's hearts all along. As Jesus finished showing me these visions, I realized our time was ending. The thought of leaving this perfect place and returning to earth filled me with panic. I fell on my face before him and begged, "Please, let me stay," I cried. "I don't want to go back to pain and struggle and worry. I want to stay here with you forever." Jesus knelt down and lifted my face to look at him. His eyes were full of compassion, but also determination. "I know, my son. Everyone who comes here wants to stay, but your work isn't finished yet. And if you don't go back and tell them what you've seen, how will they know what's coming?" He helped me to my feet and walked with me toward the light that would take me back. "Remember," he said, "you're not returning alone. I will be with you every step of the way, and one day, sooner than you think, you'll be back here permanently." This generation stands at the most important crossroads in human history, Jesus continued as we walked. They have access to more knowledge than any generation before them, but they're using it to move further away from me instead of closer. They need someone who has seen where both paths lead to warn them. He stopped walking and turned to face me. "Some will listen to you, Joshua. Others will mock you or ignore you. A few will even hate you for what you tell them. But don't let that discourage you. Plant the seeds faithfully, and trust me with the harvest." I nodded, though I still felt terrified of the responsibility. How could I possibly describe what I had seen and heard in ways that people would understand and believe? As if reading my thoughts, Jesus answered my unspoken question. Many won't believe because they don't want to believe. They've built their lives around the assumption that this world is all there is. Accepting the truth would mean admitting they need to change, and change is scary. He showed me one final vision: people hearing my story and having different reactions. Some would weep and immediately turn their lives toward God. Others would search for ways to discredit or explain away what I said. Still others would simply shrug and go back to their daily routines as if nothing had happened. "Don't take their reactions personally," Jesus said gently. "You're responsible for delivering the message clearly and lovingly. You're not responsible for making them accept it." "The process of separation has already started," Jesus explained. "People are choosing sides without even realizing it. Every act of love draws them closer to light. Every act of selfishness pulls them toward darkness. The trumpets will simply make visible what has been happening invisibly." I realized that what I had seen wasn't just about future events. It was about choices people were making right now, today, in small moments and big decisions. "Tell them," Jesus said urgently, "that they don't have to wait for the trumpets to choose. They can choose right now, in this moment, to turn toward light. And if they do, they'll be ready for whatever comes." Before I left, Jesus gave me specific instructions about what to tell people. "It's simpler than they think," he said with a smile. "Love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. Everything else flows from that." He listed practical ways people could prepare. Forgive those who have hurt you. Help those who have less than you. Stop trying to impress people and start trying to serve them. Pray not just for your own needs, but for your city and your nation. And most importantly, develop a real relationship with me, not just a religious routine. Those who are living this way when the trumpets sound won't be shaken by what they see and hear, he promised. They'll recognize my voice in the chaos and find peace in the storm. I woke up in a hospital bed 3 days after my heart attack. The doctors called it a miracle that I had no brain damage after being without oxygen for so long. Mirabelle was asleep in the chair beside my bed, and I could see she'd been crying. The first thing I did was thank God for letting me come back to her. But I also knew I had work to do. The memories of heaven weren't fading like dreams usually do. Instead, they were getting clearer and stronger every day. I knew Jesus meant what he said about me telling the world what I had seen and heard. If you've listened to extent, it's not by accident. Out of all the billions of people on earth, you're hearing this message right now, in this moment. That means something. It means God has something he wants to say to you personally. As I write this, we're still in the time before the first trumpet. Everything I saw is coming, but it hasn't happened yet. That means you still have time to prepare your heart and life for what's ahead. Don't wait for signs and wonders to convince you. Don't wait for the perfect moment or until you feel ready. The calendar in heaven is marking off days whether you're paying attention or not. Start today. Start right now. Tell God you're sorry for the ways you've ignored him or hurt others. Ask him to help you love better. Begin treating every person you meet as if they were Jesus in disguise, because sometimes they might be. I learned in heaven that every soul has a deadline. Not for death necessarily, but for decision. There comes a point for each person when they've heard enough truth and received enough love that a choice can no longer be delayed. I don't know when your deadline is. You don't know either. It might be today, it might be next year, but I do know it's coming, and when it arrives, you'll want to be ready. The good news is that getting ready is easier than you think. It doesn't require perfect behavior or religious knowledge or a dramatic experience like mine. It just requires an honest heart that says to God, I believe you love me, and I want to love you back. Help me. If you're saying that prayer right now, welcome to the family. If you're not ready to say it yet, please don't close your heart to the possibility. Keep listening for the whisper of your name. Keep watching for signs of God's love all around you. Because I promise you this, the same Jesus who spoke to me in heaven is speaking to you right now, through these words, through the people in your life, through the beauty of creation, through the quiet moments when you wonder if there's more to life than what you can see. He's calling your name, just like he called mine, and just like me, you get to choose whether to listen or walk away. The countdown is still ticking. The trumpets haven't sounded yet, but they will. And when they do, I pray you'll be ready to recognize the voice of love calling you home. Thank you for listening. If you have been blessed, please like this video. It will help YouTube to show it to more audience who need to hear about these testimonies today. Also share this video to your loved ones. It will be a great way to communicate Christ to others, and that will be the greatest gift you can give to those that you love. If you are yet to subscribe to our channel, please do so. It's free and it's a way of joining this great community of believers. Join us today and your life will not remain the same. Until next time, remain blessed.